Almost 2 decades ago, the Food and Agricultural Organization declared food security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life, and commented that poverty is a major cause of food insecurity, and elimination of poverty is critical to improving access to food. The term food insecurity is most often used in the context of individuals and households whose income is not enough to pay for basic needs. There's been significant activity in recent years to promote healthy eating and build food security. This includes government, community, and private sector initiatives, often working in partnership. One of those initiatives is the United Way of Sault Ste. Marie and Algoma District's Food Security Division, which is operating in the Algoma District under the care and direction of Mike Delfrie. Mike joins me today on Point to share his vision and the exciting potential benefits, both social and economic, that the United Way's Food Security Division can offer our community. I'm Tim Murphy, this is On Point, and thanks for joining me. We'll be right back after this brief message. Welcome back to On Point. I'm Tim Murphy, and joining me now is Mike Delfrie. Hi, Mike. Thanks for coming in.
Hello, Tim. Nice to see you again.
Pleasure. Mike and I have a bit of a history. I actually worked for you, under you. You were my boss when I worked for an employment program in the YMCA called YMCA Rocks.
YMCA Rocks, yeah.
And you're still making a difference in this community, sir, and it's great to hear. This time you're at the United Way.
It's a new venture for both me and for the United Way, this new division in food security.
Yes.
The food security is one of 5 pillars under a poverty reduction strategy that was created for the Sioux about 2 years ago.
All right.
And the United Way has taken responsibility for food security along with essential services and employment readiness, 2 of the other pillars. So.
Well, employment readiness, that's right up your alley too. But,
yeah. So we'll be integrating some of the initiatives in the food security division related to the social enterprises that we propose to create, that where the jobs will be, and a lot of the training that will enable people to get the skills to get a job.
So a lot of people probably aren't familiar with this incubator system that you have a lot of knowledge on. I mean, you have. There was one story, I think, did it come from London, Ontario, about that one particular, what was the name of that business, Michael?
It's called Youth Opportunities Unlimited.
Right.
And it was it is probably one of the best and oldest social enterprises in Canada. It began initially as a bakery and then expanded, a bakery to provide people with training, and then expanded into some coffee shops that sold the baked good products and gave people retail skills, and it just kept growing from there.
So the incubator idea is that you train people and you teach them basically how to go into business, but at the same time it's a social enterprise as well.
That's correct. So we propose to develop a social enterprise development center that will target 2 particular areas. One of them is food products, because we're a food security division and we'll be working with local farmers and community gardens. So we'll have a supply of food to produce food products.
Yes.
We also propose to create a craft products social enterprise, because we have a lot of crafters, a lot of artisans in the city.
Absolutely.
And we also have a fairly hefty tourist traffic, and it's very common that tourists look for local crafts when they visit an area. So.
We have that, right now we have, won't be long, it's getting into summer, the ships will be coming in again, the tour ships, and they're coming off the boat. It'd be nice to have some locally crafted food and crafts.
That's right.
Available for those tourists coming off the boat.
So that's the plan, is to be able to produce those products using local products, so local food and local products for crafts as well. So indigenous crafts in particular, Aboriginal people, but also ethnic crafts.
Yes.
So we have a good ethnic population here.
Well, absolutely. Ukrainian, Italian, East Indian.
Right.
I mean, it's just, and thankfully it's expanding. We're becoming more culturally diverse, which is fantastic. So take advantage of that, right?
Yeah. Using those skills and the challenge is to maintain those skills, because they're disappearing. Whether they're crafting skills or whether they're cooking skills and preserving, those are skills that our grandparents, in some cases our parents, use, because You know, you're too young to remember, but I remember the first grocery stores in Sault Ste. Marie. It was quite a novelty to go to a grocery store.
Thank you for saying that I'm too young to remember that. That was very kind of you. You can come back on this show anytime.
You're welcome.
But there were a lot more mom and pop grocery stores. I mean, James Street, Gore Street, these, every neighborhood, right, basically had their own market, kind of, and more than one on a street even, right?
And then in addition to that, a lot of the product they sold was locally produced.
So they would do their own pickling and preserving and sell it?
Pickling, preserving, and selling that. There would be locally made butter, there'd be locally, obviously eggs, all kinds of produce, baked goods, almost everything that used to be available in terms of food was locally produced. And we've kind of gotten away from that. And therefore, the opportunity to try to come back to that activity and create the jobs in the community, keep the money in the community, and grow that sector is a way to achieve a higher level of food security for people.
Can I ask, Mike, I think we've got a little time before we go to break. I just want to actually, could you give our viewers a definition of food security? I mean, when we first sat down, you were talking about food security versus food insecurity, and there is a difference between the two. Food insecurity is when you do not have food, and you're requiring things like a soup kitchen or other ways of getting the food you need to survive. Food security, on the other hand, can you just give us sort of a definition of that, Michael?
Well, food security applies to people who are able to buy the amount of wholesome, healthy food as much as they want when they want to.
Yes.
Right? Now, on the surface, most of us, you and I, and most people probably watching would think we all have high food security. And on the surface, they would be right. But when you start to look into food security a little more deeply, and you look at the impact on how we grow food, number one, the environmental impact of it, the transportation impact of it, the quality of the food and nutrition quality of the food, it starts to diminish. In other words, it isn't giving us the caliber of food that we want and need, even though it's expensive. And so we're stuck with that now because we've lost the ability to provide for ourselves. Few people garden, few people know how to cook, fewer people preserve. And so we become dependent on the food supply paradigm that exists in the world. And so we're buying fruit and vegetables from all over the place.
No kidding. I mean, I'm oranges from South Africa.
Exactly.
What?
So moving back to a time when we knew where our food was grown, how it was grown, who grew it, and had control over that is how to achieve a higher level of security.
Okay, we're going to take a brief break. We take 60 seconds. That's all we take here, Mike. It's pretty quick. And we'll be back with ONNpoint and Mike Delfrie talking about food security. And I have a lot more questions for you, so stay tuned. Thanks for staying on point. I'm Tim Murphy. Once again, Mike Delfrie. Mike, we're talking about food security, and we were just during the break talking about hunger being sort of something that's hidden. We don't necessarily know that there are the number of people in our community that are going without food, that there's sometimes a choice between paying your PUC, paying your rent, or buying food.
Yeah, hunger is, it's hidden in the sense that it's not a visible problem. People are able to hide the fact that they're either only eating once a day or they're having to make choices between paying their rent or paying for groceries, paying for their prescriptions or paying for groceries. We know a lot of, from evidence all across the country, as well as here in the Soo, number of students at college, university, they estimate approximately a third of those kids only eat once a day. And when you think about the life they have and the stress they're under for their studies, and they're still quite young and with the kind of metabolism they had, once a day is not nearly enough.
No, and especially for, I mean, your brain, you need energy to, one of the things we know is that children, even in elementary school, one of the reasons we are doing more about providing food is because children can't learn when they're hungry.
That's correct.
So in university, one meal a day, and you've got that kind of stress, and you're learning, and those are long days in university. I can't imagine only surviving on one meal. So,
well, it's very, as I say, it's right from elementary, meal school programs that support whether it's a breakfast or lunch program, all the way through high school, college. Many seniors, whether it's, in some cases they may have family support, but it's become more of a lifestyle now where more and more kids have moved away and older people don't have family supports here.
Right.
So, you know, they rely on a Meals on Wheels program.
Meals on Wheels.
You know, obviously, and thankfully we have those, right? Those kinds of programs. But I think what people have to realize is as much of a problem as hunger is in the community, and obviously, you know, how easily it is to hide that, there's an alternative to that. And we can resolve that if we can just produce more food in the community. And we have the ability with community gardens. I mean, we live in an area surrounded by farms. The Algoma district is a huge agricultural area. So, you know, where is the disconnect between people who are hungry and our ability to produce food? So that's part of our objective by creating a food resource center and supporting community gardens, community gardening, more skill development in things like cooking and preserving, so that people can take advantage of our ability. One of the areas that has really been lost is local harvesting.
Okay.
The amount of food that nature provides to us. And this time of year, all you need to do is just look out your front window and you'll see the most healthful, abundant, free, green vegetable on earth all over your lawn. It's called a dandelion.
Oh.
Dandelion plant has more.
I was going to say tulips because that's what's coming up in my yard right now, but I guess no, I won't. So
That's why they're so abundant.
dandelions, because you can use them for
Anything. You can eat them.
salad.
You can use them for salad. You can cook them. You can do anything you want with them. You can even make wine if you want to. But the point I'm trying to make is nature provides a lot of what we need, whether it's fiddleheads, whether it's mushrooms.
Love
whether it's-
fiddleheads.
Sure. And, you know, and how many times do you see someone's apple tree and all the apples are just left to fall on the ground and rot?
I have a lot of apple trees in my neighborhood, and you're right. They're on the road, they're rotting, they're falling on the lawn. That could be used for.
Well, anything, apple juice, apple cider, the pulp you make, there's a cidery in Brampton, when they make cider from
Yes.
apple juice, they use the pulp and make an energy bar from it.
Energy bars. So it's reducing waste, and as you say, using these resources that are right there
And free.
and free.
Yeah. So there's a whole paradigm shift that has to happen in the community, whether it's taking advantage of nature and what nature provides. And I mentioned dandelion is a good example. When I was a kid, we ate dandelions for months into the year because we picked them in the spring when they were fresh. We'd cook them and preserve them, and then they'd be available to us all year round. And they were free. The highest nutrient value of a green plant on earth is the dandelion. That's why
Holy smokes.
they're so abundant.
Wait, can a vegan eat dandelions?
Oh, I would imagine. I hadn't thought of that before.
That would be a good thing.
But
Well, because sometimes I have vegan friends come over, and I'm never quite sure what to serve them, so I could just tell them to go graze in my front yard. Listen, I'm just kidding. We're going to do a quick 60-second break. We're going to come back. I'm with Mike Delfrie from the United Way. Later on, too, we're going to talk about more of the programs the United Way has to offer, but we're going to stick on this food security for a while longer because I find it fascinating, and we haven't even touched on really the idea of the social enterprise aspect of it, and how we're going to combine the Food Resource Center with the social enterprise, okay? So stay tuned for more On Point with Tim Murphy and Mike Delfrie. Thanks for staying on point. I'm Tim Murphy, joined by Mike Delfrie from the United Way. Mike, your title is the Director of Food Security? No, what is
Director of Operations, Food Security.
Director of Operations, Food Security.
Because there's more to food security than just the food side. There's a whole opportunity that food gives you. And in our case, one of the areas that we're going to try to optimize is the area of food incubation, food products, and food business incubation.
Okay, cool. Let's discuss that.
Every college, for instance, every college in Northern Ontario has a chef training program.
We have one right here.
We have a huge one here, a very established one, very experienced one. And
Hi, Jenny from Sault College from the Chef program.
Very good.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, I've already approached Jenny to help me.
Have you?
I have, absolutely. So chefs almost always have ideas for a different snack food or different food product or an appliance, a tool. And so they have an idea for that, but there's no service, there's no incubator or incubation service in Sault Ste. Marie. In fact, there isn't one north of Guelph in Ontario. So we
Were you a
propose.
little behind the times there?
Well, this whole area of food security, we're quite far behind in Sault Ste. Marie and Algoma compared to Ontario.
Okay.
I really can't explain why that's the case because it's been a problem everywhere else, and they've mobilized and they've started to create food resource centers, and they've started to create the kind of educational programming and community engagement programming where you'll get corporations that will say, well, you know, we'll come and work in a garden once a week for a couple of hours. That'll be our commitment to food security.
Oh, very cool.
Lots of examples like that across the province. We will be looking for those opportunities here in the Soo as well.
So you were talking about the incubation aspect of it.
So what we'll be doing is creating an incubator, because we'll have a facility, we hope in a couple of months, which will give us a cooking ability, a kitchen.
Yes.
And when you have that capacity, then you can offer it to chefs or to people that are just have an idea for a new snack food. We're not limited, by the way, to food for humans. There's a very big market for food for pets.
Dog cookies.
Dog cookies, all kinds of products for pets.
Right.
So what we will have are some subject experts, chefs
Yes.
primarily, or business people, and I've begun to approach some of them, who will be able to advise an entrepreneur who has an idea for a new kitchen tool, or a new kitchen appliance, or a new snack food, or a new, one of the things we've begun to talk about is instead of having hot dog carts around town, why not have fresh salad carts?
Oh, wow.
That people can, you know, make a salad on the go with dressings and stuff, and just, and again, local produce, make it accessible, it's healthy.
It's creating jobs,
Creates jobs, and it just gives you...
keeping our money local.
Exactly. All those aspects. Food can be an engine for economic renewal in a community.
Oh, that was a mouthful. That was a quote. That was so quotable. Food could be an engine for economic security. Yeah, I love it. But it's so exciting. And I've always found this when I talk to you about the projects that your mind never stops, and the idea that you could take something as important as food security, but also make it beneficial and make it a social enterprise.
Well, I think what people have to realize is because we all think our food is secure, it's very difficult to get people to realize how insecure it is. And it's insecure in many, many ways. We talked about people who have to make choices. Well, that means that their food supply, their food that they're going to be able to buy is less likely, less secure for them. But there are other examples, and there are sometimes unintended consequences. There's a new law passed in Ontario this month that requires long-haul drivers to log in on an iPad at the start of their shift. Well, that's going to result in less time for drivers to drive because they have to log out after a certain period of time, which will mean there'll be need to be more drivers, more cost, gets passed on in the cost of what they carry, and often that's what they're carrying is food. It's a small example, but all you need is many of those examples to keep chipping away at your food security. So if you were part of a program, say a neighborhood program, where you got to know your neighbors, and you said, well, 4 or 5 of us have gardens, how about if we all work in the garden and we share the produce? There's almost always more food than you can eat anyway. If you're not going to preserve it, start to freeze it or start to can it and jar it and things like that. It's a lifestyle. And I think people are starting to realize that the way we live our lives today is not as sustainable as we want it to be.
Wow. And as you say, there can be so much waste from gardens too. So it's a matter of utilizing that and coming together as a community. We should talk a little bit too when we come back. We have to take another short break, Mike, just 60 seconds. But when we come back, I'd like to talk a little bit about the opportunity for local businesses to contribute and how they can do that, rooftop gardens, that sort of thing. Sure. So stay with us on Point. I'm Tim Murphy talking to Mike Delfrie from the United Way, and we'll be back in 60 seconds. This is On Point. I'm Tim Murphy, and joining me is Mike Delfrie from the United Way. And Mike, we're talking about food security at this point still. We're going to move on a little bit to more about what the United Way does later on. But before we went to break, I was asking about how maybe local businesses can contribute to the concept of food security. Algoma Public Health, I know, has rooftop gardens, and they run a community kitchen, and I believe, I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that they do grow some of their own produce for use in the community kitchen downstairs. This sort of concept is what we can talk about for other businesses, right?
Well, we just saw last week the big bike running through town. So
Yes.
businesses, corporations will get involved, they'll raise some funds, ride the bike for heart and stroke. There's no shortage of events in the Soo that corporate, that businesses and service groups, etc. We're going to give them an opportunity in the case of food to be able to support the growth of food, harvesting food, picking apples, anything that's going to contribute to the supply of food that's available to people through the resource center we have or through cooking programs. Algoma Family Services has a cooking training program, Algoma Public Health, and so forth. So the whole idea of raising the profile of food in the community, we intend to use culture as a medium because every culture has its own food. So more food-related events introducing different types of foods, whether it's at seasonal time, like at Christmas or Easter and so forth, and just go back to that kind of small town lifestyle that we used to have that so many people enjoyed here.
Yes.
We have the knowledge and we have the food, and now it's just a matter of reintroducing some of those traditions.
I still
to people.
remember going to I was a kid, and my mother used to take me, was on Wellington West, just across from what was the library, now the senior center. There's a parking lot there. And that was, I think there was like a red barn kind of building, and we used to go there for fresh produce all the time. There were little markets like that all over. It wasn't just once a week when you went to a mill market or to the Bondi Pavilion for the other market there. So you're looking at more of those sort of...
More access to food, so more markets, as you say, but also more programs. So, you know, why can't a group of people come together and cook their Thanksgiving turkey?
Yes.
As a group of friends or as a family, extended family, and do that as a social activity.
Hey, a lot of condo buildings have joint kitchens and stuff too, and apartment buildings have those party rooms you can rent out, and they usually have kitchen facilities, right?
So how can we connect those people, that facility, with local farmers? Who can provide the food, whether it's a turkey, whether it's whatever, because we have food production, all kinds of food production in this region, but there's a disconnect between the food producers and the food users, and that's part of the reason we're creating this whole network and the connective tissue, as I like to call it, between the providers and the users.
And then the facility that you're hoping for, that is in the works, we have our fingers crossed that this is going to work out for you. It would be large enough to accommodate a food storage area, a garden area, and then a seasonal area where different social enterprises could work out of. Christmas cheer is something that the United Way has done for as long as I've been alive, I think. I know my mother used to go down at Christmas cheer, and she would decorate dress the dolls and stuff that they would give away. Now there's also a food security aspect of Christmas cheer. But you're hoping in this facility that you could do all the stuff that, you know, getting the presents for the children ready, but also be doing food security stuff for Christmas time? Or?
What we propose to do with Christmas Cheer is we want to augment that program. Right now, all the food they provide through Christmas Cheer, they purchase. And we're saying...
Oh, they go out and buy food for people at Christmas time.
Sure, that's what the fundraising through the Sault Ste is about.
Okay.
So what could we produce locally to make sure that that food, that money stays in the community, supports local agriculture, creates jobs in the community? And then how can we augment a Christmas Cheer package beyond food with toys or small appliances? So there's a concept around the world in many places in Ontario called remakeries.
I love that word, remakeries.
Remakery is a place where you will remake broken appliances into appliances, or broken furniture or broken toys into things that work, rather than putting them in the landfill or scrapping them one way or another. So
So instead of throwing out 2 toasters, you fix one, and you end up with one working toaster, and that's a lot less reduction of waste.
That's right.
Brilliant. And at the same time, you're creating, whether it's a job or whether it's even just a purpose for somebody who may be on social assistance. Skill training. People want to get out of their house and have a reason, you know, and this is exactly that sort of thing. They can be trained. Wow. Okay. Once again, that's that whole incubation concept. I can't believe how quickly our time goes. We're not done yet, but we have another 60-second break coming up. So stay with us on point. We'll be right back after this message. So Mike Delfrie is here on point with me. I'm Tim Murphy, and we're talking about the United Way, about food security. Can we talk a little bit about the funding then for this initiative? Because as you say, this is relatively new for the United Way, this food security issue.
The food security as an issue has been around for a while. Taking the responsibility to do something about it, the United Way decided last fall. I approached them with a concept to put a manufacturing social enterprise that I had been trying to develop together with their food resource center, and in some conversations with the director and then eventually to their board, they agreed that they would take that pillar of the food of the poverty reduction strategy.
So this was a concept that you brought to the United Way, and it fit in with one of their 4 pillars, with the poverty reduction. And so this is how this all came to be.
Well, it was. I guess you could say I was a catalyst for them to move forward with seeking the funding that they did. Now, the District Social Service Administration Board.
District Social Service Administration Board. And you call that DSAB,
commonly
right?
known as the DSAB. They saw the opportunity to provide some seed funding so that this pillar actually got some attention. And so we were able to get some initial startup funding from the DSAB to hire me. I've got 2 staff now. One is a community engagement coordinator, Marilyn Hugg, and Jessica Laidley, who is the Food Resource Center coordinator.
Great.
So we've got the people on the ground in Sault Ste. Marie now who are working to create the capacity to solve the food security problem and to raise the amount of food and the amount of jobs related to agriculture, the amount of businesses related to agriculture, everything that's going to be needed to actually raise everyone's food security and at the same time reduce the level of food insecurity. Because currently the amount of food that's provided by the emergency food relief providers, the food banks and the soup kitchens, is limited based on their capacity to preserve food or to store food. We'll have bigger capacity.
Or the food that's donated.
Or the food that's available.
We often hear about the food drives because
right.
their supply dries up, right?
That's right. So by having the kind of food resource center we'll have and our ability to produce food and store food, we'll be able to fill those voids and fill those gaps in.
You'll also be able to contribute to things like Meals on Wheels and the school-based programs as well.
Eventually, I think as we go, we will see, as we grow the capacity to grow food locally and to process food locally, I think we'll start to see our ability to augment those kind of programs as well.
What about the 5-month winter? Is that a challenge for you?
Well, nowadays, in fact, we've done some research. There are actually 12-month greenhouses growing in Alaska with some of the technologies that they've created, whether it's greenhouse technologies or solar panel technologies and so forth. I mean, there's been a problem with food insecurity around the world for a long time, and technology is starting to come to bear to resolve that problem. And again, back to the day when our grandparents preserved food that they grew, those skills have been lost or are rapidly being lost. We have to go back to those days and recover them because we have the ability to grow lots of food around here. What we just have to learn how to do is preserve it so we have it in the winter when we need it.
Ooh, I just got one of those food dryer thingies.
Good example.
I got it with my Aeroplan points.
Good example.
I haven't tried it yet.
One of my sons bought a food dehydrator about a month ago. He loves beef jerky. It's very expensive to buy.
Yes.
So he bought a food dehydrator. It's about 1/3 of the cost, number one, but it's also only what he puts in it, as opposed to what he was buying that may have had other stabilizers in it or other, who knows what was in it.
Right.
And the same thing can apply to to fruits, dehydrated fruit. There's a huge potential in emergency relief when there's a hurricane or a tornado or a flood somewhere, being able to provide dehydrated food that can be rehydrated on site. Now, I don't know that we will ever see that opportunity here in Sault Ste. Marie, but at the same time, we can produce a lot of, we can reduce the cost for people who are buying dehydrated foods so that they have them in the wintertime. and then they've got more disposable income to do other things.
See that?
And start to deal with that problem.
Do you think we could call Dr. Roberta Bondar and ask her about what she ate when she was in space? They probably had dehydrated food.
They absolutely did.
Okay, Dr. Bondar, if you're watching, we need your input.
And Roberta would help us.
She would.
But I want to go back to the DSABs for a moment, as I say.
The District Social Services Administration Board.
The group, the folks there have really pioneered some programs in Sault Ste. Marie that I think the community isn't aware of, and they deserve credit for taking that kind of innovative approach to solving some of the housing and food security problems that have been happening in the community for a long time. And the United Way, in its turn, has been a real leader in implementing some of the pillars, some of the solutions under the pillars of the poverty reduction strategy.
And we also know that things like food insecurity and housing insecurity have a terrible trickle-down effect.
Absolutely.
You're talking about people who are living with addictions. Oftentimes, if they're not living a healthy life, the choices that they make tend to lead them down the wrong road. So this really is a betterment for our community.
I think most people
community health.
Community health.
Yeah.
Most people would understand that we all pay for poverty in one way or another, even if we aren't poor. We know that poor people use an inordinate amount of the healthcare resources, the criminal justice resources. They're less productive at work or at school. We all pay for that. So we all pay one way or another for poverty in a community. And what we're trying to get a message out now in the case of food security is there's a way that all of us can contribute to mitigating that problem of poverty by growing more food and supporting local agriculture to provide more food to people so they're not hungry.
Thanks, Mike. We're going to come back and wrap things up with Mike. I want to hear a little bit more about the other programs that the United Way offers our community, so stay with us on point. We'll be back in 60 seconds. This is On Point. I'm Tim Murphy, joined by Mike Delfrie here in the studios at ONNtv. Mike, the United Way has been around, do you even know when it was formed? I don't know what the history of the United Way is.
I think it's 50 years old, or a little bit more than 50 years old. If I recall, they just celebrated a major anniversary a few years ago. And it's very interesting for someone like me to have joined that organization as an average,
You were sort of a layman. You didn't know, you knew as much about the United Way as your average person, maybe?
I think so. I certainly have become very impressed that the organization is a lot broader and deeper than I had any idea of. Very recently, last week, the Petals for Possibility event, that Sunny Spina led. Was a phenomenal event. He had a very busy week. And it's really a good indication of just the penetration that the United Way has in the community, the breadth of programming, the essential services that they do, the community trust. They help people with out of city travel for health, things like that.
They do that too.
Yeah, they administer a wide variety of programs. They support the Neighborhood Resource Center. Obviously, this initiative is a major undertaking for the United Way. It's both a very expensive undertaking. Fighting poverty isn't cheap. It doesn't give up very easily. Poverty is a formidable foe, and it's going to take all of our ingenuity and our cunning to really bring it to ground and start to have an impact on changing the quality of life in the community. The number of people on social assistance is in the thousands, especially the number of children and also seniors. Poverty seems to attack vulnerable people like children and seniors more than you and I, and so it's kind of invisible in that regard because they're not vocal in a lot of cases and they're not out in the community. So the United Way really has taken on a huge challenge here in food security, and I think I can't think of another agency that has the credibility, the reach, the history, the depth, and the profile, the integrity in the community that businesses support to see the kind of impact that donations will make through the United Way channel. And
so speaking about donations, and obviously volunteering is a huge huge reason the United Way does as much as it does is because of the volunteers that
Absolutely.
that donate their time. If people are interested in finding out more about the food security program,
Yep.
or just the United Way in general and how they can volunteer, how they can get involved, how their businesses might get involved, or even if a business with a rooftop garden or an area that could be a garden, or they could help out somehow, how would they get in touch with you, Mike, then?
Well, they can contact me, or they can contact the United Way directly. I'll give you a small example. There's a farmer in the Sioux, a fellow named Colin Templeton,
Yes.
who operates a farm, and all of his produce goes to the food banks. It's called the Food Bank Farm. And this year he intends to expand his production and be able to offer, and is going to offer businesses an opportunity to sponsor a row in the garden.
Oh, come on.
So it's a way, and it's
That's
a common,
so cool.
it's a common practice around the province, and it's one of the things that Colin's been aware of. And the reason he hasn't done it sooner is because there isn't the processing capacity in the city that we now have. And so we work very closely with Colin, and as he grows more food, we can process it, we can cook it, we can freeze it, we can keep it available for meal programs or food banks and so forth. So I think you'll see before too long in the community some traction and some momentum happening around local agriculture, around local food celebrations and food production as we move closer towards raising the level of food security.
That's brilliant. The sponsoring a row, I'm stuck
Sponsor
on
a
that.
row.
I think that's
Yep.
so clever.
Well, businesses can do things like that, or businesses can say, well, we want to sponsor a meal program in a school, for example, right? All year long, kids get breakfast programs at schools. But what happens in the summertime when school's out? Those kids go hungry.
Oh, I never thought about that.
There's no school.
No.
So they're not able to provide the meal program for them. So these are 5-year-old kids who get no breakfast.
Okay.
So there's a program that you'll see that we are going to launch, a partnership program with the city and others to be able to deal with that problem, because it's sort of a hidden, invisible problem.
Okay, this is so great. Okay, I'm loving this interview, and I have to take another break, Mike, and we're going to come back. I think I keep threatening to end this interview with Mike, but I'm not going to. So another 60 seconds. Stay on point. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We are on point. I'm Tim Murphy with Mike Delfrie from the United Way, and we're talking today not only about all the United Way programs, but mostly about the food security program, which is a pretty new initiative for the United Way. We were saying about the fact that this is almost a change in the way you think about your food and the way you produce your food. It's almost like a cognitive shift. We were talking about grocery stores, how we're supporting grocery stores, but where does that money go? Out of the community, right?
Well, I think what people are going to have to start to realize very soon is that in order to have an economy in Sault Ste. Marie, we've got to take advantage of all the strengths that we have. And agriculture is one strength right now that we're ignoring. We can grow a lot of food here if we had a market for it. And that market comes from local people, local producers, some cases perhaps exports. But the majority of people have what they consider to be high food security. And if we can start to create jobs locally, then we'll start to see that the welfare costs go down, the quality of life costs go down, the criminal justice costs go down, and the quality of the food go up. So there's benefits all around by increasing the amount of local food.
Yes.
And it's really just a mind shift, a change in lifestyle. We become very dependent. It's very convenient for grocery stores to bring food in from outside the community. We'll always do some of that to some degree.
Well, I mean, obviously, we're not talking about putting anybody out of business with this initiative. That's not what this is about.
No, that's not at all. I think, as I said, when you look at 1 in 3 students in college or university eat once a day, right? There's lots of room for growth there.
Absolutely.
When you look at the number of kids in school programs, that in the summertime when they don't have a food program, what happens to them then? They go hungry.
Right.
So there's lots of holes yet that we can fill.
And I mean, I grew a tomato plant. Here's a for instance. I never really tried to grow any edibles. I have a green thumb when it comes to shrubs and flowers and stuff, but I'd never tried to grow anything. My sister lives out in Gooley, beautiful garlic and all. She grew asparagus for a while. She was selling it in the markets and lovely. But I tried to grow a tomato plant and I succeeded. I succeeded so well, as a matter of fact, that I didn't know what to do with all the tomatoes that I grew. I was canning and I was making sauce. I had so much pasta sauce that summer. But now there's an example.
Yeah.
I've got these tomatoes and I want to do something, so I could, with your concept, I could actually probably get an idea, come up and can or jar my tomatoes, pickle my tomatoes, whatever. Do you pickle tomatoes? I don't know if you ever pickle a tomato, but anyway, you jar your tomatoes.
But there are opportunities.
Wouldn't you pickle a green tomato? Let's try that.
One of the things they have in many communities is, for instance, something called a pickle exchange.
A pickle exchange?
Pickle exchange. So you get a group of people.
I'll go with you.
Maybe 20 friends.
Yeah.
And everybody produces a different type of pickle.
Okay.
And then you put them together, and you all have a variety of pickles. Right. So you get some variety. You get the social aspect of the exchange.
Right.
You get this the skill of growing and producing the product.
Yes.
And it's pretty novel. It's a social thing to do.
The other social aspect of you're talking about a neighborhood, for instance. So let's say on my block, we decide that we want to take action, and we've got some gardens in the neighborhood, and we've got some lovely senior ladies who grow their gardens in their backyards, and they might have some extra produce left over. So, as you say, with technology now and the different burners, what did you say, like the propane burners?
Burners,
maybe facilitate something where it's a bit of a block party, where you're doing outside, preparing vegetables from the garden to be donated or to use ourselves. What would it be donated? Or could you do a thing
in some cases, people will agree to donate the food they grow to a food bank or a soup kitchen. But even if they don't,
it's just a resource.
It's healthy.
It's healthy.
It's cheaper. It takes advantage of the opportunity that we have here to grow.
Or for instance, maybe I have a couple of senior ladies in my neighborhood who used to have gardens, but they don't garden so much anymore. They wouldn't they enjoy being able to come out and help us prepare some stuff, or be the beneficiaries of some jarred or canned goods, or whatever we pickle or cook or make.
There's lots of intergenerational programming that happens elsewhere in other communities.
So grandparents teaching their grandchildren, or not even grandparents, seniors teaching children, youth.
Teaching children, that's exactly right. And there's not just pickle exchanges, there's all kinds of, there's...
Possibilities are endless.
Well, because the variety of food is endless. And not only that, when you start to look at some of the ethnic practices, making salamis, making sausage, etc., those skills are disappearing because fewer and fewer kids are staying here in the community or have left, and it's just not a lifestyle that that as many people have anymore. And so I think what we will start to see is a shift back to more of a small town thinking, where you know your neighbor and where you actually increase your food security and the quality of your life, get your kids involved, get your brothers and sisters involved, and make it a lifestyle move.
I love it. I love it. It all sounds great, and I want to know more. So I know where to find you.
You do.
But if anybody else wants to find you, United Way.
United Way, yeah.
Now located on Queen Street.
On Queen Street, across from the SR Center. We will have literature around the community before too long.
Okay.
Of course, we will be at events. Local Food Week is coming up.
Is it?
First week of June is Local Food Week in Ontario.
Oh.
So a number of our agencies will be doing an exhibit in the Station Mall for that week.
Maybe we'll come down and visit you.
And
see if we can get down there.
Showing what we actually, the food bank garden will be there, and RAIN. We have one of the most advanced agricultural innovation networks in Ontario, possibly in Canada, here in Sault Ste. Marie. And if there's one thing that's always bothered me is that we are very creative and innovative in solving problems in Sault Ste. Marie, and we never kind of take credit for that. And I think Dave Thompson and his group at RAIN with the Innovation Center, what the DSAB is doing in pioneering a program like this, what the United Way is doing.
Nordic does a lot of great work in this community as well.
Nordic's a very good example. I think we have a lot to be proud of in the community, and that easily outweighs some of the negative aspects which is all we ever hear about. And so I'm really excited to be involved in this. This is a whole new venture for me and for the United Way.
And your energy is infectious. I thank you so much, Mike Delfrie, for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this edition of ONNpoint. I'll be back to wrap up just shortly, but my thanks to Mike Delfrie and the United Way and our conversation about food security. If you want to learn more, you know where to look, United Way. Stay tuned. We'll be back to wrap up ONNpoint. Thanks for sticking around on point. So in talking with Mike Delfrie, we've heard that, unfortunately, hunger is no stranger to Algoma District and Sault Ste. Marie. And despite the fact that we're surrounded by farmers' fields and that there's an abundance of food to be had, for some reason, there are still people going to school without breakfast, still university students surviving on one meal a day, still seniors who are relying on things like Meals on Wheels to get their food to them. And so in order to help us help each other, it's going to take a community effort. Community gardens, volunteering time, getting a hold of the United Way and Mike Delfrie to ask, how can I help? I have a rooftop garden at work and we've got people who want to donate our food. I have an idea for a product that I'd like to bring to your incubator, and maybe take a look at developing a food product or a craft that can not only be economically feasible, but also help out socially. If you have any of these ideas, if you have time on your hands, if you have any kind of a passion, a green thumb, if you have a business where you could perhaps invest in a row of produce that could be donated to the soup kitchen or to food security projects, don't hesitate to contact Mike Delfrie at the United Way. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Tim Murphy. Join us again for On Point. Take care.